That's surprising. Okay. Pam, you want to start us off? Or you want me to?
Either way, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Mason. I am overseeing the American Rescue Plan Act. Never get that thing right. Anyways, I'm here. I'm a retiree. I was formerly the deputy commissioner, and they brought me back to oversee this project. I'm excited about this. This is the first time I'm actually going to be giving out money. Before it was taking money back or not spending as much as I could. So this way I get to spend as much as I want. And so this is a good thing. This committee here is going to assist us in terms of the residential piece. And I'll get into more of that later. But I just want to introduce the co-chair to this is Pam Fields.
Hi, so I'm Pam Fields. I'm the CEO at Mid-State ARC. I've been in the field for 40 years. And I also am the founder of the ATEC Center for training for providers and families. So that sort of feeds into our movement. And I'm very excited to be part of this and hope that that background can help out with the forward movement.
We're going to get into introductions to everybody, but I want to make sure I start off with this. So let's see that everybody understands that this is considered a public meeting. And so as a public meeting, it's defined as in the Connecticut Freedom of Information, and we need to follow those guidelines. As this public meeting is being held virtually, it is going to be recorded and it will be made available to view on the DDS website. And I'll get into that, where that is in a little bit. Committee members must make a good faith effort to state your name and title each time you go to speak, because remember, there's people who are just listening in. And so you have to try to remember to say your name and your title if you have one. If you do want to speak, raise your hand in the chat box and we will acknowledge you. I do need to tell you that there is no public comment portion to this meeting. Members of the public are able to join, watch, and listen only. So with that, the other piece I want to do before we do introductions is I just want to make sure everybody knows how to find all this information. So let me see if I can share my screen with everybody. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you go to our DDS website, this page is what will come up. And you'll see over here, it says the ARPA initiative. So when you click that on, you will then come to this write-up about the American Plan Act, Rescue Plan Act. And if you keep going down on that same page, you'll see that there'll be each of these committees will be here. So in terms of us, the residential committee is down here. On that here, when you click on that, you'll have all the agenda, all the minutes, and all public meeting information. And that's where we'll also have the recording of the meetings as well. So if you're looking, if you know the meeting's coming up and you don't see an invitation, anybody can go on here and then they can get onto this meeting through that. So I just wanted to let everybody know this is where all this information will be. So if in case you miss a meeting, you can go here, you can listen to the recording, you can read the minutes and see what the agenda is for the next meeting. So with that, what I want to do is just go around and have everybody introduce themselves. If you're representing somebody, let me know. Otherwise, give a little background to yourself and why you want to be on the committee. So why don't we start with Peter Engelbrecht.
Hello, everybody. My name is Peter Engelbrecht. I'm currently the residential director at Mark Inc. of Manchester. I've been employed here for a number of years. And my interest in joining this committee is hopefully helping pave the way for some new models of supports for residential services.
And
Great,
Peter,
thank
if you could just say your title again, I think I missed it. I'm sorry.
Yep, residential director at Mark Inc. of Manchester.
Thank you.
Okay, Laurie.
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Lori Coughlin. I'm a parent of a special needs young woman with ID. I've also one of the first families in Connecticut to self-direct many years ago. So I've had some positive experiences myself with it. I also have helped other families and consumers who have self-directed over the years. My interest in this committee is primarily to offer aging parents who are not on the emergency list options, creative options to move their loved ones into a home. So that's one of my goals.
Great, thank you. Heather?
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Latora. I'm the president and CEO at Marrakesh. I've been there 36 years working there and started off working in different types of living situations for people with intellectual disabilities. I'm so excited about the committee to really invest in some change and new options for people as well. So thank you for having me.
Great, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, hi, hope you can hear me. Hi, I'm a retiree also, Peter, and an aging parent, Laurie, that has a young female, 31 years old, who's still living with us, and she wants to be independent. So I really want to know what options are around and then help with this committee to get those options in place and move forward with that and hopefully create lots of opportunities for more people.
Great,
Before
thank
it's
you.
an emergency, as Laurie said. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Carly? I think she's frozen. Looks like she's frozen. Mary Pat?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Pat DiCarlo, and sorry about that. I'm the vice president of the Kennedy Center, the Adult Services Division, and I have been involved in residential life for folks with disabilities for 40 some odd years. This has been kind of a life passion of mine. I've seen us go from the institutions to where we are today, and I'm excited about where we can go in the future.
Great, thank you. Tammy?
I'm Tammy Benegay. I'm the Director of Specialized Service Development out of our central office, out of DDS Central Office. And I am here because I was asked to be part of the committee by Peter. So I do that. And I also do a lot of transitional work with DCF and trying to find alternatives to everybody going into a group home would be great. And just a little bit about me, I also am an aging parent that has a 30-year-old daughter who's living with me that I'm looking to move to a more independent setting than what most people would consider a traditional setting for someone with the disabilities my daughter has. So I think this will be a good fit for me.
Great, thanks, Tammy. Katie? Katie Banzap, are you there? Okay, we'll come back to her. Kathy Kalo.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Assistant Regional Director for the South Region. I have also been selected to be on the committee and looking forward to how I can help be supportive and partner with everybody. We have a lot of residential background. Be supportive and partner with everybody. Sorry, I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, can everybody put themselves on mute if you're not talking, please?
Feedback.
Yeah, can everybody put themselves on mute if you're not talking, please?
Do that.
How's that? Okay. Okay, so I'm just looking forward to being as supportive as I can. I have many, many years of residential experience through the regional centers as well as community training homes, and then throughout the private agencies oversight of CLAs, IHS, supported living. So looking forward. Peter, I muted you too.
Great, thanks. Katie. Great, thanks. Katie. Having a hard time with Katie. Okay.
This is Heather from Marrakesh. I think Katie's coming as not as part of the committee, but as watching the committee. So I don't know if she's able to. It sounds like she's not able to speak.
Yeah, she shouldn't be speaking anyways. That's okay. Did I hit everybody, all the committee members? Is there anybody I missed?
You need to go back to Carly.
Carly, you're on mute.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm Carly's mom. Carly's back here. Say hi. We're on the committee because we're really interested in housing. Carly is 42 and lives at home. And we do have some in-home supports. Very hard to get people. And we've been running into a lot of it. We are both aging. I'm 70, my husband's soon to turn 70, and we're looking for safe alternatives for Carly with a little more independence.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to do some of the talking now and go over some stuff. And then one of the things I sent you was about the definitions, because I want to make sure everybody has that and go through that just so everybody knows what we're talking about. One of the things you'll find out with DDS is we love acronyms, and everybody throws out the acronyms, and we just assume everybody knows what they are, but that's not the case. So I want to go through those definitions, and then afterwards, then we'll start talking about the incentives. And so I'm going to go through these first, and then have some discussion, and then we'll send it to you guys in document form so you can actually read through it and all that stuff, and then provide feedback. But I didn't want to do that up front. I wanted to make sure I did it first so that you heard what it was all about and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking at as we go through, as we continue to go through meetings and stuff, looking at what alternatives are out there that we may not know about, what people do know about, would be great. And any issues that, we see that could get in the way of us moving forward with this initiative. So let me start with my piece here. So everybody should have gone to the orientation piece that we had about the overview of the American Rescue Plan Act. I just want to make sure that people understand some of the nuances of this. And then the part of the bill that came through had to do with workforce stability for providers. And so there is a lot of money that we're sending out to providers in terms of workforce stability, for workforce, for enhancement of staff, and for infrastructure. What we're talking in terms of these committees is more of the transformative part, to look at how do we start transforming the system. Right now, and how we got to this, so just so that everybody understands, DDS receives 50 cents for every dollar it spends on supports to individuals with intellectual disabilities. It comes close to about 50% of the DDS budget. And this is all funded through the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So what the ARPA legislation allowed was for the state to receive a 10% match on all those services that we had, and use that money then in a way that we've never had a chance to do in the process. Since the private provider provides close to 90% of the residential supports and almost 100% of the day supports, the plan approved by CMS is centered mostly around the provider. This is where the funds can have the greatest effect. The idea here is to assist providers to expand the non-congregate residential and day settings to give individuals a greater choice in the options they have, and using money that may come up to assist people on the waiting list. And while this may be provider-centered, we have to make sure as the committee, as DDS, that it's critical that we maintain the person's individual choice on where to live. We look at this as a once in a generation opportunity that we just want to make sure we maximize. In my 40 years, I've never seen money that like this. And so it's imperative that we use this to its fullest. So what do we hope to accomplish? So we've established some pretty aggressive goals. What we're looking at is 100 individuals moving from a congregate setting to a non-congregate setting, so more alternative residential settings. And for day, we're looking for 200 individuals to move from a congregate day program into more community-based programs. And we're looking to utilize the ARPA funds to establish more alternative residential and day settings. And we're trying to look at how do we reset people's expectations of what community living is, whether that's living in an apartment or working out in one's own job. We want to try to move people so that it doesn't look like the group home is the first option for everybody. We want to make it so that there'll still be a place for group homes, but that shouldn't be the first option that everybody thinks about. We're hoping to transition away from those settings, whether it's, and we may be looking at some of those more congregate settings for more significant supports for individuals who have more medical and behavioral supports. The way it was designed in the past is that we have an issue is that houses have had individuals in there that today wouldn't go into a group home, but back then that was the only option. And so providers have been struggling because to put individuals who have more significant supports into some of these houses will upset the balance of that house. So we're trying to figure out how do we redesign some of that. There'll be some homes that will be probably will close, and then there's others that may be redesigned. And we're trying to figure out how to do that, whether it's living in one's own home, either in an apartment or community companion home, or working on their own job. The department has a long way to get there. And what we're hoping with these funds, it is our hope to set the foundation for that to happen. So I want to give you an update of where what we've done to date. So to date, we've sent out providers payments. There's been one provider payment we've given out for the financial stability, workforce enhancement, and infrastructure and technology. A second payment will be going out to providers in September. We issued a notice of opportunity for assistive technology. One went for just to individuals and one went for providers. We're right now in the process of awarding over $600,000 between the two. We issued an RFP, which is a request for proposal for a vendor develop and maintain an employment network site. Right now we have an employment network site that is used for people who self-hire their staff, and it's pretty weak. So we're able to use the ARPA dollars to develop and enhance that website that hopefully will be able to do able to do better matches for parents, individuals, and the staff. We've issued an RFP for a consultant to assist with the transformation and one for communication. The transformation consultant, we have awarded that one. That more details will be coming out. Those transformation consultants we're looking at working with the department and with the providers in terms of developing transformational plans. The communication consultant still being reviewed, but we hope that that will be in place by September. And the reason we're looking at a communication consultant is we're trying to do this in a way that we make sure that we reach everybody so people understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. And we need it in a message that's clear and concise. And so that's the goal that we're trying to do. And the other big piece to this is time. Time is the biggest factor for us. While CMS just extended the deadline until March of 2025, DDS has to work within the legislative budget approval process. So what we have is approval from our legislator to use these funds through June 2024. And since we have that approval, we don't want to take a chance that that money might not be available in 2025 because that's 3 years away from here. So that puts us on a tight timeline, and sometimes we're going to have to move quickly, and that's not something that government does, believe me. And what you're going to see as the committee, things may be slow at first, then ramp up, then slow down again. Because in the beginning, we're trying to move things along. The incentives is going to be a big piece to this committee. Then looking at the template in terms of what that transformation piece would look at. As things calm down, then we can start looking at alternative residential options. We believe that the big piece for us now is to get those incentives out so providers know what we're talking about. Then we need to look at developing that transition plan probably the next 4 to 6 weeks. We know that this is real tight, and there may be sometimes some decisions that we may need to make as a department in order just to keep the process moving. We'll try not to do that, but things may come up where we need to make a quick decision. And if that happens, then what we'll do is we'll come back and run it through the committee. And if there's issues that need to be done, then we will then make adjustments based on recommendations and stuff. So those are kind of some of the things I just wanted to throw out there. And I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding it. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to make sure I threw all that stuff so people understood where we were coming from. Okay. Oh,
If anybody has any questions throughout, please just raise your hand. And this is Pam Fields, CEO at Mid-State Art and co-chair. Please make sure you remember to use your name and title also. Thanks.
Mary Pat.
Hi, Mary Pat DiCarlo from Kennedy Center, Vice President. In all of this planning and looking towards the future, is there going to be some consideration or a serious look at our aging population? One of the things that we are facing as an agency is a lot of our guys who are presently independent are aging, and we're finding that they need to come back for more supports. So whether that be to the group home or, natural supports, short of we're trying to avoid long-term care, obviously.
Yep.
So is that part of this transformation, looking at this older population that, 30, 35 years ago, we didn't really have to deal with, but now it's a good number of people.
Yeah, and everything is on the table. So, and we can discuss all that kind of stuff and figure out what recommendations we have and how to move forward. So anything is on the table in terms of that. Tammy?
This is Tammy Venegay, Director of Specialized Service Development. Is this committee supposed to come up with ideas, or are we implementing something that's already been thought of?
So what we are looking at is a combination of both. So we've come up with the incentives, a draft of the incentives. We felt that it was important to have something for the committee to take a look at and provide their input from instead of starting from scratch. So we tried to look at it that way. But there are other things that if the committee comes up with alternatives or recommendations, you know, that definitely will be looked at as well. Pam?
I should have wrote it down. I already forgot what I was going to say, so I'll come back to it if I remember.
Okay. As you can tell, I'm the worst one in terms of saying my name all the time. So Peter Mason. If not, let us go through the definitions. I'll try not to go too crazy with this, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So let me.
And while you're pulling that up, Peter, I just wanted to say, Mary Pat, I did remember what I was going to say is that most of the assistive technology we're using for independent living, especially remote monitoring, was all based with the elderly. So hopefully, like Peter said, we can do a combination, but most of the technology came from the elderly population.
Pam, can you bring up the definitions page?
Yes, I can.
I'm going on something else that's a little bit more easier for me, but I just want everybody else to see this.
Is it up?
Yep.
Okay. I just have that one error in there because I didn't have the changed one.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I'll get to that. And for those, if you can't read that, one of the things you can do on your computer, if you hit Control and then you use your the wheel on your mouse, it will expand that for you.
How about that? Let me make it bigger this way. How's that?
That's better. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start off with a CLA. I think everybody, what we call a CLA is actually called it's a group home. In our language, it's a community living arrangement, which is why it's called a CLA. As a group home, it's individuals that share a home in the community and are supervised by staff on a set shift schedule. It's licensed. It's in the community. It can be done by private, by DDS public staff and by private staff. There's usually 6 or fewer individuals, but we do have some homes that have more than that. If you have a home that has 4 or more, it needs to have a fire sprinkler system. The supports in that house are 24/7. And the room and board, so the cost of the house is paid through by the individual's entitlement, and those are determined through a room and board rate that's issued by the Department of Social Services. And if an individual in a CLA doesn't have enough money of their entitlements, there's a supplemental check that DSS will issue on behalf of the individual. We then have a continuous residential support, which is a CRS. So a CRS is a smaller group home in some ways, but that's not what it was originally designed for. It was originally designed as a shared living arrangement, which individuals share a home in the community and are supervised by staff on a set schedule. It's not licensed. And so it can be in a home, and we've seen some in a residential home, we've seen some been in apartment buildings. These are provided only through private providers. These homes have 3 or less people. There's no more than 3 individuals in the house. Once again, they're supported by staff that's 24/7. Individuals pay the room and board through their entitlements, and some of them get offset by DDS has an account that has a rent subsidy to it. So it's a rent subsidy amount. What we find is that in some of these instances, some individuals who don't have enough money sometimes have less money than they would if they were in a CLA or a regular licensed group home. The other one, next one we have is a community companion home. We call that a CCH. And a CCH provides a nurturing home environment where individuals can share responsibilities, develop relationships, be independent, and make their own choice. They're living in a family's house. It is licensed, but the license is actually the licensee is actually the CCH individual. The home is reviewed and licensed, but it's more the licensee is the family. It's the supports are provided by the licensee, who's independent of DDS, and is overseen by either a public or private staff. There's in a licensee, there's usually 3 or less in the house. The supports are provided by the licensee for all the skills, all the assistance and daily skills that they need, so that they can live independently. And they pay a percentage of the the licensee's room and board costs through their entitlements. Individualized home supports, which we call IHS. Now that's a tailored, individualized plan for staff supports that meets the needs of the individual who lives independently in the community as possible. It's not licensed. It's provided in the individual or the family's home. This is done by private or self-hired staff. DDS just last year or 2 years ago stopped providing supports, stopped providing IHS supports. The services that are provided are intermittent supports. They're not 24 hours a day. The supports are provided based on the individual's level of need and in their individual plan. So a typical use in this plan is somewhere between 5 and 20 hours. There are those that have more than that. Then they would need to go through our planning and resource allocation team for additional hours. And they would pay for their rent and utilities through their entitlements. If they get a paycheck, that would help pay for it. And then rent subsidy payments from DDS is also would be a part of this. An offshoot of IHS is cluster supports. And so cluster supports is having a group of apartments in an area close by. There'd be a staff that's overnight and would be in traveling distance in case of an emergency. It's a shared staff, so it's not assigned to one person, it's assigned to a group of those that's part of the cluster. They're not licensed. It's in the supports are provided usually in an individual's home. It's done by a private staff or self-hired staff. Usually the individuals live in their own home, and the cluster setting consists usually of one individual living in separate dwellings within it's about a half a mile from each other, no more than a half a mile from each other. That's been a little bit expanded because of technology. We're able to do that. The reason it's called clustered is because they're in a clustered area, and that there's a staff that's available to them between the hours of 11 to 7. Other than that, they have regular individualized home support hours that helps provide supports to them. Our newest program that we have is supportive housing. So supportive housing is for individuals to live in their own apartment with access to shared supports, shared staff. It's not licensed. The setting is in an independent community-based apartment complex. So they're all in the same complex. This is provided mostly by private providers. The apartments are designated, they're actually set aside for individuals with intellectual disabilities in the complex that is receiving low-income tax credits. And what we're looking at in these types of settings is that no more than 25% of those apartments can be designated as for people with intellectual disabilities. We're trying to make sure that we keep these in an integrated setting. And individuals receive IHS supports, individualized home supports based on their lawn during the day. And then they would be able to go into the apartment. And there's a staff usually available. They have access to, it's a shared staff, there are access to that. There's programming that's done for not just for the individuals, but for the whole complex to try to make sure that the integration continues. And with this, once again, their room and board's paid by the Social Security, but in some of these places, there's a different kind of mechanism. It's called rental vouchers or RAPs, which we've used in terms of these types of settings. Remote supports is also our newest thing. What we're looking at with remote supports is the delivery of supports at a remote location through virtual means. So in essence, individuals living in their apartment, and the apartment's been equipped with communication technology, sensors, that allow the individual to live independently, but if there are issues that they have needed additional supports, there's somebody on the other end that will be able to communicate with them and help them to continue to live independently. So some of the things that you would see is that if an individual comes home, they come home and go right to their bedroom, and then the kitchen, that nobody's been in the kitchen for a couple hours. The refrigerator hasn't been open. The stove hasn't been open. The microwave hasn't been used. Somebody may get on the line and say, "Hey, is everything all right? Are you feeling okay?" Especially if they've not, if it's gone past what their usual life rhythms are. There's also a backup staff to this. So in case there is an issue that needs to be addressed, as a backup staff that would be able to go in and assist the individual if needed. This is done in either the provider's done in the individual's home or in the community. It can be done by a private or self-hired staff. Some of it can be done by natural supports as well. Shared living is a program that we have that is, it's a creative program, and the rules of this are very flexible. But basically what they're trying to do is how do the supports get shared among the families, if there's a provider involved, among staff, and how does that get shared so that to allow the individual to live in the community on their own with the supports. In most cases, there's no more than 2 people in the home. There's one individual who's a life sharer, one person that may live in the home and help assist the individuals. And then there's times that other people can come in to provide assistance as well. The supports, I said, are shared. That's why we call it shared living. And last is we're working through this issue. It's transitional housing. And this is a program where we have individuals who are looking to move into the community, but right now live in a group home. And so moving to the transitional housing will allow them to transition from congregate 24-hour, 7 days a week supports and slowly wean them off so that they end up with offshoots within the building also have separate apartments so that they then start to learn how to live on their own with less supports to the point where they've gotten to the point where they can now move off into their own apartment, and it's not as scary as going from A to Z in one fell swoop. The house is designed to be flexible, the staffing are designed to be flexible, to provide the individual the supports they need and to slowly reduce their dependence on staff. Okay, so those are the different ones that we have right now.
Peter, this is Pam from Mid-State ARC. We didn't cover the transitional housing. I didn't know if you wanted to.
I just did. Oh, you know what? I did that at the end, Pam. I just was.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's what I was doing at the end.
I lost you there for a second. I thought you were still in shared living.
Nope. I moved on.
All
Sorry.
right, got it.
So those are the different things, the different supports that we have. There are some variations out there. We have some supports which we call electronic face-to-face, so that supports can be provided electronically instead of having to be in person. They can do it face-to-face. That's not necessarily a model. That's just a mechanism for how to provide the supports. So I wanted to give everybody, so now everybody has an idea. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. I know that not makes sense, whatever.
Hi, Peter, it's Lori. Did you discuss self-direction?
Self-direction, I think, did I jump over that? I probably did, didn't I? Yes, sorry. So the self-direction, self-determination, this is an option that individuals who choose to hire their own staff, they are given a budget and able to use that budget to provide the supports that the individuals need. That budget helps them in terms of the staff, any other additional costs that you would have through the budget that you would pay for. And so this is having people take control of their budget and working on a plan that meets their needs. And there's usually somebody who's overseeing that. Most of the time it's a family member. We do have people out there that may be able to assist families outside of them to help with the budget and stuff. But for the most part, it's usually the families, but we do have other people that can be hired to help manage the budgets. Sorry about that, Laurie. Okay. Everybody knows everything now, right? You're all good with this, huh? Okay. So Pam, I'm not too sure if I've missed anything. Anything I've missed so far?
No, we covered everything on the definition list, and let me just pop over. I think clusters. No, the next thing is the incentives.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna share my screen. What happened? Where'd you go?
You unshared.
I unshared.
Yes.
Let's try that again.
Okay, now it's back.
Let's see if I can get this to get the slideshow. Okay. Can people see that?
You just went to draft. So you had the first page up, the title, and you just moved to where it says draft, residential transformational changes. Okay.
Okay. And I don't know how, are you guys seeing that big enough? I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what we're looking at is we need to define what programs would be eligible for the incentive. And so in our head at this point, it's that the moves, a move that will lead to the closing of a congregate setting or the redesign of that setting. And so that could be moving to an IHS, which is an individualized home supports. That could be moving to an IHS with remote supports, moving to a clustered IHS. We have IHS, the cluster IHS with technology, so they may offset some of the staffing in terms of with technology. Moving to one's own home, an apartment, and family home using just electronic face-to-face, if that's what they think would be appropriate. If it's just to somebody's home using remote supports. Moving to a community companion home, a CCH. Moving to self-direction from their supports, or moving individuals who have significant behavioral and medical supports off the emergency list and into a vacant bed or CLA or CRS. So as they're looking at doing some changes, you know, it's like, okay, we're going to move these guys here. We're also going to then look at taking individuals who we have on the emergency list to fill the bed and to help fill the bed as well. So how are we supposed to do that? So this is what we've come up with. And one of the things that I want to make sure that we're clear is that we've designed these. And once again, this is a draft. So we're looking for feedback and people's opinions. But these have been designed and calculated based on our outcomes. If we're looking for 100 people to move, we've come up with we've calculated the money of what that would take to move those 100 individuals. If that target number is over or under the estimated amount come the end of the year, we then may have to adjust. So if we do really well and we come up with that we have 25 individuals left, then we need to, at that point, we'll need to look at, okay, do we try to expand that out, or is it 25 and then that's the end? I mean, some of those decisions we'll be making. I think, you know, the way I look at this is that there's only so much, I don't know how successful this is going to be in terms of moving people, but if it does become successful, there's only so much money. And at that point, then we would have to readjust. If at the same time it's the other way, we don't have very many, then we may need to increase the incentives to make sure that we reach our outcome. So I just want to make sure I said that. So this is based on the 100 individuals. So we're calling it, and this is once again a draft, you know, these all can be changed. So the moving on incentive. So if an individual moves from a CLA or a CRS, they're going to receive $33,500 for each individual who moves out of the CLA or CRS. It's a one-time payment after 60 days. There'll be no strings attached to that money, other than it has to fall within the cost standards of OPM. When the individual moves out, we have to make sure that we provide stability for the provider. And so what we're looking at is we will pay the CLA or CRS provider an incentive in terms of we'll reimburse them for the provider, whatever that individual's authorization is, we'll pay that authorization up to, I believe it's 4 months as we're working through the transition. So if 2 people move at the same time, both of those individuals will receive their regular authorization for 4 months. And then lastly, the new placement. So, and I'm putting these because if a provider can be creative and cooperative with other providers, there's the receiving provider, there's the sending provider. So we try to make it so that this didn't prohibit it. So that's why we've kind of broken these out. So for the new placement, what we're looking at is an individual goes into a placement, they'll receive 2 times the standard hourly rate for that support. So the incentive is they would get their regular standard amount, and the incentive would be a second hourly rate equal to that amount for a period of time. So those are the 3 incentives we have. This matches what we had to do with CMS in terms of rates and all that kind of. I won't get into the technical piece, but that got part of it. So how does this, let me just show you this, how this plays out. So a provider comes to DDS with their plan, and the provider has 5 CLAs, and they have 4 vacancies right now. One of the CLAs is a 4-bed, and it has 2 vacancies. So individual A in that house is a lawn 5, and individual B in that house is a lawn 5. I tried to make it simple so that we're not dealing with different lawns. The provider has a cluster IHS program with 5 participants in it. So their proposal is they're going to move 2 individuals, A and B, from the 4-bed CLA to the cluster, and over a 6-month period. And in the end, they're going to close the 4-bed CLA. So how that would come out is the provider will receive $33,500 for each of the 2 individuals who move out of the 4-bed CLA. So they would receive after 6 months, after 60 days after they're out, a payment of $67,000. At the same time, they'll be reimbursed for the 2 individuals who have moved out or are moving out. They'll be reimbursed for that time period to make sure that there's stability, because if you take it away right off the bat, you may not be able to pay for the staff. So we try to make sure that we had that in there in that case. And then the individuals will get an hourly rate of $77.60 because the current IHS rate is $38 and something, 38.3 or something like that. So they would actually receive a payment of $77.60, which is 2 times the hourly rate. They'll receive also the cluster rate for those 2 individuals during that time. And they'll do that over a 4-month period or 20-week period, whatever, but it's over a 4-month period. They'll receive that. In the end, the provider will have received 80, let's see, 65,000, where is that? 32, that's a wrong, let's see, hold on. They'll receive $67,000 for the move on incentive. The transition payment, they'll have received 65,476. For the new placement, if they're the provider doing it, they would receive 86,912. And they'd get a cluster rate as well. And so they'd receive another 1,111 and 264. So that provider, if they did that, would receive about over $200,000 for all these moves.
And Peter, there's a couple questions in the chat.
Okay. All right, so is the DDS providers only, is this the DDS providers only, or does it include someone moving from a DCF CLA to, this would only be for individuals who are a part of the CMS waiver. So I don't know if somebody's in a DCF CLA, if they're part of the waiver, whether they would be eligible for that. We'd have to take a look at that. I don't think so, but we would have to take a look at that.
Would the, sorry, I'm going to just follow up. It's Tammy. Would the receiving agency be part of it? Because they would then be on the waiver?
I'm not too sure, because it's not, there's no, the idea is to move people from a congregate setting, and then what's happening to that congregate setting. If nothing's happening to that congregate setting, it's just a regular move. So we're looking at what is the effect it's having on the congregate setting.
Yeah, and I understand that. It's just a way to encourage people to not always think of a CLA for people that are transitioning. That's all I was thinking.
Okay, I mean, that's something that we can throw into the mix. Does the CLA have to close in order to get the incentive payment? No, but there has to be, what's the design of that placement going to be? This isn't just to move people out and fill that house with the same exact people. It's, are they redesigning it for individuals who are on our waiting list with an emergency or behavioral issues? So the idea is that you may have agencies who don't have the skills or ability. And so as part of their transformation plan, they're going to put in, this is what they want to do. They're going to do a gap analysis. So this is what we need in order to get to where we need to be. And that may need some assistance in terms of behaviorists and other clinical supports, and how do we do that? Then there'll also be like a sustainability part of it. Okay, after you get all that, how do we sustain that this is going to happen? So it doesn't have to close, but we have to make sure that it's going to be providing supports to individuals that we know are on our waiting list in need of emergency placements. And lastly, would funding go to the actual provider in terms of a CCH licensee providing direct services? Yeah, that's a good piece, because it's the same reason we have an issue with the self-direction of giving extra money to the families and stuff. The way this was all written to CMS is in terms of rates and providers. So it would be the CTV portion that would get it. It wouldn't be the licensee.
So, okay, Peter, I'm going to follow that up with a question. If you're looking at, and it's Kathy Kalo, sorry, Assistant Regional Director. If you're looking at a CCH licensee maybe providing enhanced supports outside of the scope of the rates, rather than like just an enhanced specialized model. Say they're able to do that with whatever skill set they have. Can we look at that as a possibility for funding that separately, or maybe not ARPA funding, or maybe ARPA funding initially, and then we figure out how to make that work after?
Oh yeah, I think that's the kind of stuff that I would hope that we would be looking at. I think, the idea for this is we're not going to have all the information. We're not going to have all the answers. And we don't want to shut down any idea. And so if there's issues that come up like this, if a CCH provider wants to be providing supports to somebody that will stretch their resources, how do we then work with that, work with the system to help make that move? So yes.
Thank you.
Let's see, any thoughts about incentives for transitioning a typical CLA to transitional housing CLA? With reducing staff to increase these opportunities for people to learning. I think we can look at that. Once again, it comes down to what is the design of the new house. We really don't want to look at somebody moves out and then if somebody else moves in, that then it just stays as a group home. But if it's look at something like this, I think we can try to figure out how to work through that. Yep. Okay. So Pam, to follow Heather, also incentivize a person moving directly into a smart house from a home instead of moving into a CLA. You want to kind of explain that one, Pam?
Well, what I was thinking was, somebody could be living at home and the normal course for them would be to place them into some type of a CLA. But when you introduce assistive technology, remote monitoring, and all those smart home pieces, they could possibly move into a cluster or into an IHS instead of a group home. So would that be considered in the incentives? So they're not coming from a CLA, but they would have gone into a CLA, and instead they're being redirected into an IHS or a smart house.
Well, in terms of how the initiative was written, no, but in terms of how we can look at it as a system, yes. What is it that we would need to do for that? That's definitely something we should be looking at, and try to figure out how to do that. I know when we did these initiatives, it was, we didn't have a whole lot of time. We had to go real quick in order to make sure we hit the deadlines and all that kind of stuff. So we may not have hit everything we needed to hit. So, that's why I'm trying to be as flexible as possible in terms of what we can do.
And maybe at some point I could share our plan for a transition house so that people can, you were saying depending on what it looked like, and we sort of started a model, Heather, on how to change that CLA into that moves people into an IHS or a cluster apartment. So it's almost like a transition, that's why we call transitional. Excuse me, I'm Pam Fields, CEO. So transition over that way, but so you redesign the house in order to show that movement through. And then there's a limitation about how long they can stay in the house.
Yeah. Laurie, I think it's Laurie, right? You're very small on my screen. I can't see. That's why.
Yes, it is Lori who has her hand up.
Yes.
And then Heather.
Hi, Peter. Is the incentive offered to agencies that would move individuals from a CLA over to a CRS?
No.
Okay.
We consider a CRS as a still a congregate setting.
You do? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that was my question.
And then Heather has a question.
Hi, Heather from Marrakesh. There are several agencies like ours that do have CLAs that are not one house. There are 3 apartments that are close to each other. So I think agencies that already have those settings where a CLA might be 3 different apartments might lend themselves nicely to transitional living and switch. And actually we had one person move out to a CCH. We've had one person move out to independent living. So they're kind of like that already. So that's why I was thinking it'd be an easier way for some agencies to get from that particular type of CLA to independence.
Yeah, no, that's something to definitely look at. I think one of the things would have to be, would have to be cognizant is the outcomes. That it's not a change in name only just to get the extra incentives and then everything stays the same. So there would have to be, what are the outcomes? What would that look like? How would we measure that? So that would be something that I would be concerned about.
And would some of those outcomes be then a reduction in staff? So now it's not 24-hour CLA. Would that be, not the ultimate outcome, but the part of the outcome, because it will be less expensive and it will be testing them out in a safer environment till they could move on their own.
I think we'd have to take a look at what the proposal is. Yeah.
Okay.
And Peter, Mary Pat had a question about would the transitional living be licensed?
The transitional housing piece, I think Pam is looking at setting that up, but I think you're having it as a licensed facility, right, Pam?
Right, and I think it could really be designed either way, but we are setting it up to be licensed.
Yeah. I mean, we would take a look at how that could work, but probably for the sake of trying to get through the system, licensing would probably be an easier piece to it than non-licensed because it's individual in a congregate setting. So, but it's not something I'm saying against. It's just looking at speed and stuff. And as I said, time is not on our side.
And Mary Pat has a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say it would be interesting when we get to that point to bring licensing into the conversation, because would they be flexible enough for this type of a program? They're not always into the new and changing and flexible. So that's where we would have to get them on board.
Exactly. And that's, one of the things that's one of the reasons to do this, the DDS engagement committee, is to make sure everybody understands what's happening, to have someone come onto this committee from licensing to discuss that. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and we should probably do that. One of the other issues that we're going to start seeing out there is, DSS and room and board, and as you're going from 3 to 2 to 1 or whatever. So we've started conversations with that. We've had issues in terms of the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, CHFA, and their mortgages and having to be a licensed facility. So we're in conversations with them. So we're trying to bring everybody in so that everybody knows what we're doing, why we're doing it. Our goal is if we can start loosening up some of the dollars, we would be able to start attacking some of the people on the waiting list. And so that's, that is in the back of our head as to how to do this. And, we don't want to compromise health and safety. We realize, that assistive technology has come such a long way that it can assist in terms of where we're going, and how do we maximize that, and once again to make sure that we are able to try to support as many people as possible in the settings that we're looking at. The group home setting is the most expensive, and it's also the most staff intensive as well. And, there's a staffing crisis out there, and I've heard from providers saying, they don't have the staff to do this, but I look at this, if a provider works hard enough, they would be able to figure out how to maximize their staff, and maximizing their staff may not necessarily be in a group home the best option. Is you got to have somebody on that shift each time, every 2 days, every 2 people on each shift. If there's ways of being able to adjust those individuals, in terms of other alternative options, and then that will hopefully loosen up that staff to be used elsewhere as well. So kind of looking at some of that stuff. Yes, Pam?
I think one of the other things too, as we look for a continuance probably after this, as we're moving forward, we also need to look at changing what actually happens in the group homes. So maybe there's group homes that don't need overnight staff. Maybe there's group homes that need different staffing ratios. So in almost like what the CRS offers, where you can change those staffing ratios to really look at those components too. So you allow some of that technology and more independence inside the environments for people who can't quite make it outside of them.
Right, exactly. Yes, that's something we can be looking at.
That
So the
last
last-
question on the chat was is a good one. Will the rent subsidy budget be sufficiently funded?
So, and that's why we're starting to bring in DSS at this point, Department of Social Services, because they're the ones who oversee the room and board rate. Well, if we're going to start looking at reducing the number of group homes, that means they need less money on their room and board piece, which can then get shifted into the DDS rent subsidy. So we'll also be having a conversation with OPM, Office of Policy and Management, to, all right, so as this is happening, we need to increase how much money is in our rent subsidy to make sure that we have enough money available for individuals. Pam?
No, that was it.
Okay. So we have questions to resolve. I guess my question to start off is, do you think these incentives will make a difference with the providers?
I think so. It's Kathy Kalo from the Assistant Regional Director Office in Wallingford. I think so. I think that agencies are somewhat faced with a very tough staffing crisis right now and really forced to think outside the box. And I think some of the creative measures that we should be looking at are these types of environments. And I think it almost, it gives agencies a different perspective on how they could be looking at their current homes and their current setups and look at less restrictive settings. I think that this is the way many agencies would like to go if they believe that there's support moving forward to do so. Especially in certain geographical areas, they are really struggling.
Yeah.
Mary Pat?
Yeah, I would agree. I think the providers will be on board with this because they know it's time for some change and the staffing crisis is forcing change, etc. My concern is, or the barriers that I can kind of foresee coming up will be the families themselves of the individuals who are presently living in the CLAs and not wanting to change. They're happy with what they've got. Why mess with it? Why change it? And I'm also concerned about making sure case management is on board with this because, as we've talked about many times before, even the folks in IHS, when we want to decrease the number of hours we're contracted to provide them because they don't need it anymore, nobody wants to decrease those numbers. So to me, those are going to be two big challenges. And I think that's where the communication is going to be key in all of this.
Yeah, no, this is Peter Mason. I say it every 5 times or something, maybe. Yeah, I agree. And that's why, we were adamant to make sure that we had a DDS staff engagement and an individual and family engagement. We need to make sure that we're getting the message out there that this is what's happening, this is why we're doing this, why it needs to be done. Because they may be satisfied with the group home, but I don't know if they're satisfied that people are putting in 2 or 3 shifts in a row because they can't find staff. And, eventually that's going to catch up someplace and somebody's going to make a mistake because they're exhausted. So, I think we need to make sure people understand. I don't see this staffing crisis being averted for a while, if at all. There's just more and more these types of supports that people are going to be needing, and staff are going to get spread so thin that, you know, we just have to look at how do we maximize the staff and keeping them in a setting that's so staff intensive is probably not going to help down the road. So if we're looking at, you know, these questions, and, you know, I'm not expecting everybody to come up with these great answers, but I'm just throwing these out here. And what we plan on doing is sending you guys the presentation so you can see it, think about these questions. So when we come back next time, you know, all right, how do we start handling some of this? You know, there are other residential settings that would be eligible. I mean, so is the smart home, you know, going to be eligible? Those are the kind of questions. Are there any things out there that we did not, any scenarios we didn't think about? You know, how long does someone need to stay in the new setting? We have to make sure that people aren't jumping back and forth. And it's like, okay, is this the right setting for the individual, and not just something that that the individual tries, comes back, tries again, comes back. I'm not opposed to that. I just want to make sure that we're using the incentives in the right way. What should be provided in the plan? So what else are we going to be looking in terms of the transition plan? Where we've got the transformational consultant. They should be on board. We have to meet with them, so I don't want to say who they are. We have to meet with them, but they're going to be tasked with making sure they come up with what that transformational plan would include. And so we'll have them come to the various committees to get everybody's input to make sure, you know, we hear from everybody. The whole involvement of individuals, families, case managers, regional administrations in the development of that plan. I mean, what is that going to look like? You know, how is that going to work, and how's that going to get worked through? What's the approval process? You know, that I can see a scenario where the region may not agree with the plan, and after they go back and forth and not able to come to an agreement, is there a different process that they could go to? You know, we can look at something like that. And, you know, we put these together because we wanted to have something, these incentives, because we wanted to have something you guys could, you know, grab hold of. Is there something that we're missing that will help us, you know, with the goal? So, you know, I don't want it that we're coming in and saying, this is what it is, so just vote on it and say, yes. We're trying to make sure this is inclusive, but we didn't have the time for us to have a brainstorming session, and that goes on and on and on. And then 5 months later, we finally have a product. So we try to come up with something, and, you know, if this aren't correct, let us know. But, you know, we're just trying to make sure we move forward. Pam, I see your hands up.
Yeah, so Peter, as people are thinking about these different questions and putting together a variety of maybe questions or more answers underneath them as subcategories, should they be sending them to us so we can start putting them onto a you know, white page to start using during the next meeting, or should they just bring them to the next meeting? I would think they'd send them in advance if they could.
Yeah, I think that would be good. They could do it either way. I mean, if they don't want to, they want to bring it, they can, or they could send it to us. I mean, I think, you know, if they send it to us, then it gives us some time to think about it as well. So,
and then also to put it on in the you know, in the areas, so that when we get back together, we have it up there so people can see it.
yep. Let's see, hold on, okay, so there's 2 questions here. Can we share this document with others at our agency or others providers to gain their feedback, or is this just for us at this time? So this is a public meeting, so anybody can go on and see it. I had the conversation with Keith Lavalette, who's also on the ARPA team here. And I said, we got to keep it within the committees. And he goes, Peter, it's a public meeting. So yes, you can share this because people can find it and see it, whatever. So you can share this and bring back the feedback that you want. It's, it all has to go through the committee members, and so not to go, not to have people jump on here and be talking, because we just have to make sure that it's the committee that's doing that.
I think, and then the other thing, Peter, we have to add to that is that we do not have a lot of time to process stuff. So when, I think it will be helpful for all of us not to just come to have a discussion, but come with some solutions. Also to bring the solution, because we are on a time schedule, and we've all been on committees that do a lot of that rehashing and chatting and then eventually come up with an answer, but we don't have all of that time to do that. So bringing the concerns, but also bringing possible solutions or suggestions, I think will help speed the process up.
Yeah, no, I agree. Before I get to Kathy's question, this is Peter Mason again. I'd like to hear from the parents, because I know this is, once again, I said from the beginning, this was a provider-centric piece, but we cannot discount the parents and the individuals in terms of this. So, if you guys could give me your thoughts at this point, and something, if we're missing something or whatever. Lori?
Yes, hi, Peter. I think these incentives are very good for the agencies and providers. Would there be any incentives offered for individuals that wanted to self-direct? I'm working with a lot of families, who are using CFC money. They don't have any DDS money for residential. And these are families who are in emergencies, but the parents are aging. The individuals have lawns of 2 or 3, so they're not very, very high needs. They're individuals who, with some in-home supports and remote and even community first choice funding, will allow their loved ones to move out into an apartment. I just am wondering, is there an incentive that where some funding would be available for IHS?
Not directly.
Okay.
I mean, the hope is that if this is successful and more people go into non-congregate settings, that there'll be dollars that will be loosened
Available.
up. And at that point, then individuals could then, we then could disperse that based on, whatever criteria. So, but I think it's not directly, CMS did not want us to be handing individuals and families, money.
Right.
And that's why we're going through this. I will say though, if an individual, as part of the plan, that they're in a group home and then they want to go and self-direct, they have the money that they would be able to port the money that
Right.
they have and use that money to provide the program that they're looking for. So, that's the easier case. For those
Yeah.
that don't have money, it's going to be hopefully indirectly, it will be able to start flowing some of that money for individuals who we haven't been able to do in the past.
Yeah, I've worked with families who've had budgets and they have moved from one setting to, less restricted, but they already had the budget.
Yeah.
Now I seem to be receiving calls from families who want to blend services, with community first choice and that lack enough funding, to make that move. So, but I do understand the overall picture is to free up more funds to be able to meet those individuals, who may not be right at the emergency, level at this point, but they're aging and they want to have a plan.
Yep.
So,
No, I
okay,
get it. Yep.
okay.
Now, this is Peter Mason talking, because as a retiree, I can say that. This is Peter Mason as the retiree. I think somewhere down the line, the department might need to set up 2 tracks. If you want a group home, you're in track A. If you want other supports, you're in track B. And track B is probably going to be a lot faster than track A. And so you would then start encouraging more people to go the alternative route, because they'll get services more quickly. And those that want a group home, they can hang on, but it may be a long time before that happens. So, but that's just my thinking, and I'm just a retiree, so no one listens to me anymore.
But Peter, this is Lori again, but in some cases, it's not a choice by the parent because their loved one requires 24/7.
Well, yeah,
remote
right.
may not even be an option for some.
No,
of
I
them.
get that. I mean,
Okay.
and I think that's why the department's not saying we're closing all group homes. There are going to be individuals that require 24/7 care. We get that, but it shouldn't be the first choice. And what we find is that because of safety reasons, they think that it's safe to be in a group home versus to be in their own apartment. So they only want to go into a group home. That's going to slow the process for them, if they if they looked at alternative options.
No, I understand. Yes, thank you.
Yep. Brian, I haven't heard from you, so I figured I'd put you on the spot.
Yeah, hi Peter and everyone else. I'm interested in listening to Laurie there a lot in terms of what she's dealing with as opposed to what providers are dealing with. I mean, we're having similar problems thinking, who's going to fund this? And as she said, there isn't much in this that goes to the individuals. There's definitely that. It's mainly for the providers, as I can see. And if people are coming out of group homes, going into individual places, isn't that going to make the waiting list kind of longer for a while? Or is it just that the money that's being saved in group homes is going to end up going to help lessen the number in the list?
That's the goal, is that if there's money freed up, that it will go to individuals who are currently on the waiting list.
Okay. I know that waiting list is pretty long.
Yep.
Is there ways in this that will make the whole system kind of more efficient so that more people can get into sort of independent living or whatever they can get into with help from DDS or community first choice or whatever can be done?
Brian, and if I could just add to that, we've moved several people, and I'm sure the other providers can speak on that too, into more independent settings, and we're able to transfer that money to people on the waiting list. So we know it works.
Yep.
We just need the system to get moving. So then more of that money is going to be flowing.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I certainly look at these questions to resolve and see what I could do over input in the next 2 weeks, before the next meeting. So it's a lot to take in right now.
It is a lot, I know.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the other factors in all this is that we have a system, and we have some providers, and we have case managers, and we have families, individuals who are risk adverse, that they don't want any risk at all. And so that then has limited what their choice and options that they'll think about. And usually that then relies on the place that has the most staffing as a group home, thinking that that's the safest place to be, which is not necessarily the case. But you know, I think we have to acknowledge that that we have to figure out with our messaging that, you know, that you can be in your own apartment but still have the safety component of it. And how does that work? And I think I don't think we've done a good job in terms of some of those messages. Peter.
Yeah, Peter Engelbrecht from Mark Incorporated in Manchester. I agree with you. You know, the risk factor for some people is huge, but I remember not too long ago, we very much supported the dignity of risk. And that's how people lived, and that's how people learned. And sometimes you fell down and bruised your nose, you got yourself back up, and that's how you learned, and that's how you grew. And it seems like it's a much more kind of litigious environment now. And I'd love to get back to that whole dignity of risk, where people can live and try new options and really explore and grow.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't work for everybody, and certainly understand that. But I think that's how everybody lives and grows through that whole process.
Yep, I agree. I got to go back to the question, Kathy. You had, I would like to involve my team, including CMS, to include them in discussion as they oversee the case managers and will be able to support. Yes, you can involve them in case.
Yeah, it was just going back to Mary Pat's point that oftentimes the administration's challenged with some of the reluctance or just the fear of the unknown for folks. And I think the more support we can give them, as well as get their feedback along the way, I think it'll be easier on everybody if they're just more included.
This is Pam from Midstate, and I agree, Kathy. I also think that we're trying to work really hard to get more of those videos out that show the success for families, for people with the same skill levels as the individuals in their families. The more we can do that, I think the more willing they're going to be to even look at it.
I agree, Pam. I think it's an important educational tool when they see the reality of it. Absolutely.
And that's, you know, our hope with the consultants is that they'll be doing a number of forums, family forums and case manager forums to help get this discussion going, so that, you know, we need to get the message out here. And so. Okay, anybody else have any questions in terms of all this? I know this has been a lot, and I'll send this out to you guys so you can let it digest. But as I said, I wanted to go through it to make sure you understood what we were talking about. And you know, as I said, it's public information, so you can share it. I would hope, especially on the provider side, that as we're working through this, we don't start hearing people whispering on the side, you know, we got to change this, we got to change that. I would hope that they would be going through the committees to work through that process, and not trying to come in at a different way because they're not on the committee.
Right, and I think the more that we can share with people and then bring their points back so that they can hear that we're hearing them and discussing it, so they can still be part of it in that, you know, way, by their information making it into the committee.
And as you all know, you can't make everybody happy. And so at some point, decisions are going to have to be made, and it may not meet everybody's needs. So, you know, but we will have to move forward, and because I said time is of the essence, and we can't. I want to make sure I get all the input as possible. We look at what we need to look at, but in the end, we need to make a decision and move forward. And so, if that means people don't get everything, yeah, I know, I'm used to being in that position, so. All right, I think there's one more thing on the agenda, Pam. You're on mute.
Sorry, ongoing meeting times. We set up tentative meetings going out. And we wanted to discuss to make sure that that was still going to work for people, or I know some people were really struggling making all of those meetings when they had full-time jobs. So we just wanted to have the discussion on that. Maybe even people can, I don't know, email in. This is Pam Fields. People can email in if you had other ideas about it. I don't know, Peter. I don't know how you wanted to proceed with that.
I guess if anybody, this is Peter Mason, if anybody has objection to what we've put out, let us know and we'll try to work with that. Right now, we were trying to set something up, but if anybody has objections, they can't do this time because it's a set time for XYZ, let us know. And if we don't hear from everybody, we'll assume that these times are good to go.
Right. And the other question I had, and maybe all the members could, email us back, is that if we did one, like a 2 to 4, and then the next week we could do maybe a 4 to 6. I don't know if that would work, Peter, if we did something later for the families, so a give and take.
Yeah, I mean, whatever the committee wants to do, we'll work through it.
So those are just thoughts.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any other issues? If not, we will sign off. But we got to work through the minutes, and so we'll have those put online on the website. We'll get the minutes, and although everything will be in those places. Once again, we'll send something out to the committees, but anybody else, they could go to the website, and it will all be there for them.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This was a
Thank
great
you.
discussion.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.